famous cartoon characters as superheroes. It's an idea that I really liked, a few people have suggested, kind of like a riff on my Pokemon as superheroes episodes, but taking cartoon characters from a bunch of different franchises and redesigning them if they were human superheroes. And admittedly, today's episode was going to be something different. It was going to be video game characters if they were Jedi and Sith Lords, and I still like that idea, but I did 2 drawings for it, and I was just like, these don't look great. I'll show them at the end of the video in case anyone's curious, but I wasn't feeling it and I just had to drop that and start on something else. So this is kind of a last minute switch, but hopefully for the better. Let's see what happens and jump into the first drawing. Alright, now first up, I felt like I had to do ScoobyDoo for this. I mean, he's one of the most famous cartoon characters. We got a new Scooby-Doo movie coming up called Scoob, and I think it's going straight to streaming services now because of all the COVID stuff. Nothing's going to theaters anymore. And for Scooby-Doo, I knew I wanted to do something kind of Batman-like, because even though Scooby's kind of one of the goofy ones of the group who kind of just doesn't do a lot of the mystery solving himself except by accident sometimes, he is still a part of a team of detectives, essentially, people who go around solving mysteries. So I gave him a very Batman-y kind of look with a big cape, and of course, the ears, I tried to shape them a bit differently so that they weren't so Batman-like, they were a little bit Scooby-Doo-like. I tried some floppy versions of them, but that just looked a little bit too goofy, and I'm okay with goofy for this video because I figure a bunch of these are gonna have sort of goofy designs, but I, still wanted it to look kinda cool. So along with being a detective, I see this Scooby-Doo superhero as someone who lives in a town that is full of incredibly superstitious people who believe in monsters and creatures, and the villains of that city really lean into that and take advantage of that, so they'll dress up as things like ghosts and monsters and creatures to scare people and make it even easier for them to pull off their crimes and heists because people are too terrified of them to do anything. Then Scooby-Doo superhero here, who I don't have a name for because I'm bad at coming up with superhero names. I like coming up with dragon names, but superhero names I'm just always bad with, so people can name these in the comments. But anyway, Scoob here sees that it's just people pulling off heists. There's nothing supernatural in this city, it's just humans, and he wants to show that to everyone. So he goes around solving all of the crimes in the city and unveiling these fake monsters that are terrorizing the town that he so loves. I wasn't sure muscle-wise how bulky or big to make this one, so I kinda just made him my default fitness for a character, like muscular but not crazy, huge and massive. Looking at Scooby's body, he is a really big kind of dog, but I don't really know what way I should have leaned with that. But I like how this one turns out enough, so let me know what you all think, and someone can name him in the comments, our Scooby-Doo superhero. Now, Dipper Pines from Gravity Falls is probably the least famous of the cartoon characters that I work with in this episode. Obviously, he is still very well known. Gravity Falls is a very well-loved show. It's just not as long-running or hasn't existed as long as the other things like Scooby-Doo in this episode. But I couldn't resist because I've been wanting to do something with Gravity Falls. I absolutely love that show. I watched it twice all the way through a long time ago now. I guess it's probably been 4 years or something since I watched it. Might have to go back since it's on Disney Plus now. But anyway, with Dipper, I knew I wanted to do something Doctor Strange-like, as if he's created his own kind of magic, like he's discovered all this crazy, mystical, monstrous, supernatural kind of stuff, and now he's developing his own magical skills and writing his own book of sorcery and wizardry that he can use to fight off supernatural creatures. And I also took a little bit of ideas from the look of Iron Fist. I don't really know why my mind was going there, but I like the idea of doing this bandana. I wanted Dipper to look a little bit on the scrappy side. I tried to make him look a little bit younger still, like he's a teenager, so obviously a bunch older than he is in the show, but like he's still a hero who's working his way up the ranks of the superhero world. And I used that tree symbol that's on his hat, put it on his book and made it the logo of his whole superhero outfit and on his magic to help show that this is magic that he is developing himself. Like he is crafting his own kind of magic to use against supernatural creatures. And I think it would be kind of funny to have a team up with the Scooby-Doo superhero and this superhero, because this is a character that actually fights off supernatural creatures, whereas Scooby-Doo's whole thing, the Scooby-Doo superhero that I made, was him proving to people that supernatural creatures don't exist in his city. So, you know, that sets up for a pretty perfect team up and an interesting dynamic between these characters. I kept this design pretty simple, partially because I had a little bit less time to do this video, because I burned through a day working on the drawings that I ended up scrapping, but I think the simplicity works really well, and I really love how this one turned out. So I hope y'all like him too. Dipper Pines as a superhero. I seriously sat staring at a bunch of these drawings thinking, what could the name for any of these be? I don't know what it is with superhero names, I'm just not great at coming up with them. Like, I thought Big Dipper, but he's not that big, and Little Dipper, but he's not that little, and that's just not a good superhero name in general, so seriously, feel free to name these characters in the comments. I always love what all of you come up with. It's usually better than the superhero names I come up with. Anyway, enough of me rambling, back to the next drawing. Next up, we've got Bugs Bunny. Possibly the most famous character in this episode? I don't know, Scooby-Doo is very famous, SpongeBob is pretty famous, but anyway, with this one, the thing that I wanted to lean into the most was his speed and jumping. I mean, he's a rabbit, he's fast, there's a lot of stuff I could have worked with from Bugs Bunny because he's such a ridiculously cartoony kind of cartoon character. Looney Tunes is just so over-the-top, cartoony, animated kind of stuff that I wasn't sure how much I wanted to lean into the wild stuff that Bugs can do because he lives in a cartoon. I ended up just leaning more into the speed and jumping kind of thing, but there was a lot of stuff I could have pulled from. But I do really like what I ended up going with, though it does end up looking very Quicksilver-like, which makes sense because he was one of the inspirations I was going off of. I was pulling inspiration from Quicksilver, The Flash, and Batroc the Leaper, the comic version, not the movie version, because the movie version was too cool looking and wasn't super superhero-y looking. I mean, he's a super villain, but you get what I mean. I was just thinking Batroc the Leaper because this character was going to be leaping through the air. And like with a few of the characters in this, there's not a ton to pull from visually from Bugs Bunny's look because he's a very simple design. So I took some rabbit elements, made that an emblem on his chest, and then I just did a bunch of like beveled sections on the suit to make it, you know, a little bit more detailed, even though I knew the design was going to stay relatively simple. And even though the carrot isn't actually, you know, built into Bugs' body, I decided that would be a good way to build in some more color to this character, have some pops of orange around it, and I think that really spices it up, and I think that kind of makes it. With the ears, I put a little bit of red in his hair to emphasize the ears. With bunny characters, I realize a lot of the time when I'm doing a, you know, Pokemon as a superhero that's kind of a bunny-like Pokemon, I usually am doing a female character and just turn the ears into like ponytails or pigtails. Didn't really feel right to do that for a male character, so I just kind of like spiked his hair up a little bit more. I probably could have come up with something a little bit more ear-like, maybe given him a helmet, but I already did something like that with the Batman Scooby Doo kind of drawing. So I don't know, this one does end up very Quicksilver-like, but in spite of the lack of creativity, I still really like how this one turns out. So I hope you all like it too. Bugs Bunny Superhero. And now for Spongebob Squarepants, the character who spawned the idea to do this episode. Even though I think he turns out to be one of the weirder ones of this video, he ends up looking a little bit goofy, but I'm saying goofy in a good way and bad way in this episode, but anyway, I knew with this character what I wanted to do was a character who can absorb the moisture in the air to expand parts of their body. And so I was thinking a little bit kind of like All Might from My Hero Academia. Anyone who knows him knows that when he's in his resting state, he's like really skinny, got a creepy face and tiny and stuff, and he just like, I guess, hulks out in a way and gets big and muscular, but he doesn't go crazy or anything. He just kind of turns into a Superman kind of character. And for this, I wanted a character that can kind of control that. A little bit in a Mr. Fantastic kind of way, where he can expand parts of his body, but with this, it's not like huge stretchy power. It's just kind of, he absorbs moisture in the air to expand like giant fists that he can use to punch people, or expand his legs really big so that he can run crazy fast. It basically expands his muscles, but in a controlled way where he decides which parts of his body are going to grow and shrink when. As I'm describing that, it sounds more and more Mr. Fantastic-like, but, you know, like I said, without the stretchy kind of powers. I also knew I wanted to give this character a big goofy grin. A lot of these ones I was kind of doing big and smiley. I think that might actually be why I like the Dipper drawing the best in this video, because he has a different expression. But, you know, the big goofy grin is a thing that I usually really like. And with this drawing and the Bugs Bunny one, I gave the characters their sort of signature buck teeth, because that's just an iconic part of the character. And with SpongeBob here, there was obviously more to work with because there's a little bit more going on to his design. I also decided to make him a bit bulkier, muscular, partially because of the powers that I was giving him, but also because I wanted him to be kind of blocky, because SpongeBob is mostly just a square/rectangle. I wanted to make sure I kept some of that idea in this character's silhouette. It doesn't necessarily translate that well. I made his head a little bit squarish too, to try to pull in more of the, you know, square. But I don't know, I'm mixed on this one. It's definitely odd looking. So let me know what you think. SpongeBob Squarepants as a superhero. Alright, despite this episode being done under a little bit more of a crunch, I actually really like how these drawings turned out. And speaking of that time crunch being a factor of, I had started a different episode, the video game characters if they were Jedi and Sith Lords. The first drawing that I'd done, here it is. It was Tom Nook as a Jedi, taking a little bit of inspiration from Rocket Raccoon to make him a slightly more realistic looking raccoon. Obviously not actually realistic, just a little bit more than Tom Nook is. And then the drawing that made me officially decide to scrap the video was my Kratos as a Sith Lord. I had loved the idea, and I just did not like how the drawing turned out at all, so that was why that episode didn't happen. I still want to do something Star Wars related sometime soon. Maybe I'll take a second crack at that episode with different gaming characters. But I don't know, always open to suggestions in the comments, and let me know if you want more stuff like this, cartoon characters turned into superheroes, or if you just want me to do another round of Pokemon as superheroes, because I really love those episodes too. If you haven't seen the Pokemon as superheroes episodes, I'll link the playlist and all that kind of stuff. And I got tons of other superhero stuff on the channel. I Venomize characters, put superhero characters into Star Wars or D&D or whatever. So if you haven't seen those kinds of videos, check them out. Think you might enjoy them. But that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Because of the reaction to the X-Men Dragons episode, definitely going to be doing another Dragons episode this coming Friday, but I'm not telling you what it is yet. You'll have to wait and see. Check the community posts on Wednesday or so. Alright everybody, thanks for watching and goodbye.